My son swore it was the perfect investment for my retirement savings, and I believed him until the broker called and said, "Don't sign anything. He's not who you think he is." I couldn't believe it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. "Dad, I need to talk to you right now." Ward burst through my front door without knocking, his face flushed with excitement and something that looked like desperation. He carried a massive bouquet of roses in one hand and an expensive bottle of wine in the other, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I looked up from my evening paper, reading glasses sliding down my nose. "Ward, what's gotten into you? I haven't seen you in 2 months." He set the gifts on my coffee table with theatrical care, his hands trembling slightly. "These are for you, Dad. I've been thinking about Mom lately, about how she always said, 'Family comes first.'" He pulled out a sleek tablet, swiping through documents with practiced confidence. "I've found something incredible, a perfect investment opportunity." The tablet screen glowed with official-looking letterheads, impressive graphs, and testimonials that seemed too good to be true. Harrison Financial Group. Guaranteed returns of 18% annually. Minimum investment, $100,000. "Look at these numbers," Ward continued, his voice gaining momentum. "This isn't some get-rich-quick scheme. These are legitimate institutional investors." He showed me photograph after photograph of supposed success stories, testimonials from retirees who doubled their savings in 2 years. I examined the documents with an engineer's attention to detail. The company seals looked authentic, the financial projections were professionally formatted, and the testimonials included full names and photographs. Ward had clearly done his homework. "The opportunity closes Monday morning," he said, leaning forward in his chair. "Dad, you've been working your whole life, paying off Mom's medical bills, being responsible. You deserve security in your retirement." My late wife's words echoed in my memory. Trust family first, everything else second. Ward had never brought me anything like this before. Usually our conversations revolved around his latest failed venture, or another request for a small loan. "How much would I need to invest?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "180,000 would give you optimal returns," he replied smoothly. "I know it's most of your savings, but, Dad, this is guaranteed. The company has been operating for 15 years without a single loss." Ward pulled up another screen showing the company's supposed headquarters in downtown Chicago, complete with street view photographs and employee profiles. Everything looked legitimate, professional, trustworthy. "Your mother always believed in taking smart risks," he said quietly. "Remember when she convinced you to buy this house instead of renting? She said sometimes you have to trust the people you love." The manipulation was subtle but effective. Ward knew exactly which emotional buttons to push, which memories to invoke. He'd been planning this conversation for weeks, maybe months. I found myself nodding, despite the voice of caution in my head. The documents were convincing. Ward seemed genuinely excited about the opportunity. And after 40 years of conservative investments, maybe it was time to take a calculated risk. "The returns start immediately," he continued. "First payment in 30 days. Think about what you could do with that extra income, Dad. Maybe take that trip to Ireland Mom always talked about." My hands shook slightly as I reached for the tablet, scrolling through page after page of financial projections and testimonials. Everything looked professional, official, legitimate. "I trust you, Ward," I said finally. "If you believe this is right, then I'll do it." Relief flooded his face, though I caught a glimpse of something else. Guilt, perhaps, or fear. But it passed so quickly I might have imagined it. "I'll meet you at the bank Monday morning," I continued. "We'll need to do this properly, with all the documentation." Ward's smile broadened as he stood to leave. 10 o'clock at First National downtown. "Dad, you're making the smartest financial decision of your life." As he gathered his things, I noticed his hands had stopped trembling. Whatever nervousness he'd brought with him had evaporated the moment I'd agreed to invest. He kissed my forehead like he used to as a child and headed for the door. "I'll call you Sunday to confirm the details," he said, "and Dad, thank you for trusting me." I spent the weekend alternating between confidence and doubt, reviewing the documents Ward had left on my kitchen table. Saturday morning brought second thoughts. Sunday evening brought renewed conviction. By Monday morning, I dressed carefully in my best suit, the same charcoal gray I'd worn to my wife's funeral 3 years earlier. The drive from Evanston to downtown Chicago took 45 minutes through spring traffic. I arrived early and waited in my car, watching business people stride purposefully along the sidewalks of the Loop District. Ward appeared at exactly 10 o'clock, walking toward the imposing marble entrance of the First National Bank. "Morning, Dad," he said, straightening his tie as we approached the glass doors. "Ready to secure your future?" The bank's interior intimidated me. High ceilings, polished marble floors, the kind of formal atmosphere that made me feel underdressed despite my suit. Ward guided me to a desk where a professional woman in her 40s introduced herself as Ms. Jennifer Chen, Senior Banking Specialist. "Mr. Rice, your son explained you'd like to make a large investment transfer," she said, pulling up my account information on her computer screen. "This represents most of your available savings." "My father is diversifying into a growth fund," Ward interjected smoothly, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Harrison Financial Group has an excellent track record with conservative investors." Ms. Chen's expression showed professional concern, but she nodded and began pulling up transfer forms. "I need to verify the receiving account information and confirm this is your decision, Mr. Rice." My hands trembled as I signed document after document, watching the banker enter numbers that represented nearly 40 years of careful saving. Ward provided account numbers and routing information with practiced confidence, explaining investment timelines and projected returns. $180,000, Ms. Chen said, double-checking the transfer amount. "This will leave approximately $15,000 in your primary savings account." "Yes, I understand the risks," I replied, though my voice sounded uncertain even to my own ears. The computer processing seemed to take forever. Numbers flickered across the screen as my life savings moved from my account to an investment firm I'd never heard of before Friday evening. Ward maintained casual conversation about market trends and retirement planning, playing his role perfectly. Finally, the printer churned out a receipt confirming the completed transaction. Ms. Chen handed it to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Your funds have been successfully transferred to Harrison Financial Group," she said. "You should receive confirmation from their office within 48 hours. Ward shook the banker's hand and guided me toward the exit. "Congratulations, Dad. You've just taken the most important step toward financial security." Outside in the parking lot, Ward's demeanor remained upbeat and confident. "I'll be in touch with the investment team this week," he said. "They'll probably want to schedule a consultation call to discuss your portfolio preferences." I held the transfer receipt in my trembling hands, feeling a mixture of accomplishment and apprehension. The numbers looked surreal. $180,000 transferred to Harrison Financial Group for investment purposes. "When should I expect the first returns?" I asked. 30 to 45 days, Ward replied, checking his expensive watch. "They need time to allocate your funds properly. I'll call you with updates soon." We parted ways beside our cars, Ward driving off in a sleek sedan I'd never seen before. I sat in my old Honda for several minutes, staring at the bank receipt and wondering why I felt so empty after making such a significant financial decision. The drive home felt longer than usual. I kept glancing at the receipt on my passenger seat, trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. Ward had never presented anything so professional, so thoroughly researched. Maybe he was finally growing up, taking responsibility for his future and mine. Tuesday morning found me in my kitchen, coffee cup in hand, staring at the bank receipt. The numbers still looked surreal in the morning light. $180,000 transferred to Harrison Financial Group. I felt oddly empty after yesterday's major decision, as if something important had been lost rather than gained. I decided to call Ward to discuss investment details and timeline expectations. The phone rang straight to voicemail. "Ward, it's Dad. Just wanted to talk about the investment. Maybe get some more details about the timeline. Call me back when you get this." By evening, he still hadn't returned my call. I tried again, leaving another message with specific questions about when I might hear from Harrison Financial directly. Still no response. Wednesday brought multiple call attempts at different times, morning, lunch, evening. Each one went straight to voicemail. Finally, late Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text message. "In investor meetings all day. We'll call soon. Everything on track." The message felt wrong somehow. Ward was usually chatty, especially about money and business opportunities. This generic excuse didn't match his usual communication style. I spent Wednesday evening at my computer trying to research Harrison Financial Group online. Their website looked professional, but provided minimal specific information. No detailed staff directory, no physical address beyond a downtown Chicago postal box, no client testimonials beyond the ones Ward had shown me. Thursday morning, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week earlier. I drove to Ward's apartment in Lincoln Park. The 20-minute drive took me through neighborhoods I rarely visited, past trendy restaurants and converted warehouses that had become expensive condominiums. Ward's building was a modest brick structure with a small lobby and intercom system. I pressed his buzzer repeatedly. No answer. I waited in my car for 3 hours, watching residents come and go, hoping to catch sight of my son. Nothing. Finally, I entered the lobby and pretended to check the mailboxes. An elderly Hispanic woman emerged from the elevator, struggling with grocery bags. "Excuse me," I said, helping her with the door. "I'm looking for Ward Rice in apartment 4B. Do you know if he's been around lately?" Mrs. Rodriguez, according to her mailbox, studied my face with curious eyes. "Haven't seen him since Sunday morning," she said. "Left with lots of luggage and some redhead. Looked like they were going on vacation or something." My blood felt like ice water. "Luggage? What kind of luggage?" "Big suitcases, couple of duffel bags." The woman was wearing expensive clothes, lots of jewelry. They looked excited about something. I thanked her and walked back to my car on unsteady legs. Sunday morning, the day before our bank appointment, Ward had been packing to leave town while I was reviewing his investment documents and preparing to trust him with my life savings. Friday morning brought a sleepless night's worth of realization. I sat in my living room, making a list of warning signs I'd ignored. Ward's expensive suit, the new car, his sudden interest in my financial situation, the urgency of the Monday deadline. The investment documents were probably fake. Harrison Financial Group was probably non-existent. My son had stolen $180,000 from me and disappeared with his girlfriend. I stared at my phone, debating whether to call the police or try Ward's number one more time. The rational part of my mind said to start with the authorities, but the father in me wanted to give him one last chance to explain. As I sat there wrestling with the decision, my phone suddenly rang. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello? Mr. Rice? This is Wiley Black from Harrison Financial. Don't sign anything, The line went dead. The phone remained pressed against my ear long after the dial tone began. Frozen in my leather armchair by the window, I listened to the electronic buzz as if it might resurrect the voice that had just warned me about my own son. I tried calling back immediately. Busy signal, then again. No answer. The third attempt went straight to an automated message. "The number you have dialed is not in service." Setting the phone down with trembling hands, I stared at Ward's investment documents spread across my coffee table. The official seals suddenly looked less impressive, the testimonials more generic. How had I missed the warning signs that now seemed so obvious? "Harrison Financial exists," I said aloud to my empty living room, the engineer's mind taking over. "But they don't know about Ward's deal." I opened my laptop and began systematic research. The legitimate Harrison Financial Group had been operating since 1987, managing institutional portfolios worth billions. Their client minimum was $5 million. They didn't accept individual retirement investments of $180,000. Ward's fake business card lay next to my keyboard. W. Rice, investment consultant, with a downtown Chicago address. Everything about it looked professional. Expensive cardstock, embossed lettering, a phone number that no longer worked. The evidence mounted like a court case in my head. Ward's expensive suit that he couldn't afford. The new car. His sudden interest in my financial situation after months of minimal contact. The urgency of the Monday deadline that prevented me from researching thoroughly. If Ward lied about this, what else did he lie about? My family photo sat on the mantel, Ward at 25, arm around his mother during her final Christmas. She'd trusted him completely, defended his choices when I expressed concern about his lack of direction. "Give him time," she'd said. "He'll find his way." I found his way all right, straight to my bank account. The betrayal cut deeper than the money. I could survive on $15,000 if I lived carefully, sold the house if necessary. But the realization that my own son had looked me in the eyes, invoked his mother's memory, and systematically stolen my retirement, that wound would never heal. By Saturday morning, denial had transformed into cold determination. I dressed in my Navy suit, the one I wore to important occasions, and retrieved Ward's business card with the office address. If he'd maintained a real office, someone there might have answers. If not, I'd learned something valuable about the scope of his deception. Standing in my hallway with car keys in hand, I took one last look at the family photo. The young man smiling beside his dying mother bore no resemblance to the predator who'd manipulated my grief and trust for financial gain. I started the car and backed out of my driveway, heading downtown toward whatever truth waited for me at 150 North Michigan Avenue. The drive downtown took 45 minutes through Monday morning traffic, giving me time to steel myself for confrontation. I rehearsed what I'd say when I found Ward in his office, how I'd demand an explanation without losing my temper. By the time I reached the Loop District, my hands had stopped shaking. I parked in a lot 2 blocks away and walked to the address on Ward's business card. The building was impressive, 20 stories of glass and steel rising into the gray April sky. Professional-looking people streamed through the revolving doors, briefcases in hand, phones pressed to ears. The lobby directory listed dozens of companies by floor and suite number. I scanned every entry twice. No Harrison Financial Group. No W. Rice, investment consultant. Nothing matching any name from Ward's fake documents. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt like ascending toward Judgment Day. I walked down the carpeted corridor, checking suite numbers until I found the one from Ward's business card. Empty office. For lease sign taped to the window. "Can I help you find something?" The security guard had followed me from the lobby, probably concerned about an older man wandering the halls looking confused. "My son's office," I said, showing him Ward's business card. "Suite 1547. The guard checked his computer terminal in the lobby. That space was leased for 2 months, ended last week. Renter paid cash, left no forwarding address. 2 months? The timeline clicked into place. Ward had been planning this theft since February, researching my finances, preparing his elaborate fraud while I trusted him completely. "You might want to talk to Mr. Robertson in 1549, the guard suggested. "He runs an IT business, might have noticed who was renting next door." Zeb Robertson was organizing cables behind a desk covered with computer monitors when I knocked on his open door. A pleasant man in his early 50s, he looked up with the slightly distracted expression of someone pulled away from technical work. "You're looking for the young man who was barely here?" he said when I explained. "Nice kid, polite enough, but something felt off about him. Had an expensive suit and fancy briefcase, but his office was practically empty. Just a desk, 2 chairs, nothing else." Zeb led me to the window overlooking the corridor. Weird thing was, he'd show up for maybe an hour every few days, usually with some older person in tow. Looked like he was giving presentations or something. Other victims. Ward had used the fake office to convince multiple people to invest their savings in his non-existent fund. "Found these in the trash when he cleared out," Zeb continued, handing me a small stack of hotel receipts. Palmer House Hotel. Guy was living pretty well for someone just starting a business. The receipts told a story of luxury I'd unknowingly funded. Room service charges of $300, spa treatments, premium restaurant bills, all dated during the weeks Ward had been setting up his investment company and working on landing the big fish, me. "You think he'll be back?" I asked. Zeb shook his head. "Cleaning crew said he took everything Friday night, paid the lease termination fee in cash. Professional moving crew, nothing left behind except those receipts." I thanked him and exchanged contact information, promising to let him know if I learned anything about Ward's other victims. Walking back to my car, I studied the Palmer House receipts under the afternoon sun. The hotel was in the Gold Coast district, about 15 minutes away. Sitting in my Honda in the downtown parking lot, I felt the last remnants of fatherly hope drain away. Ward hadn't just stolen my money. He'd built an entire false life around defrauding people like me, using luxury hotel suites and fake offices to appear successful while systematically robbing the elderly. I started the engine and pulled into traffic, checking my GPS for the Palmer House address. If Ward and his girlfriend had lived there for weeks on my money, someone at the hotel might remember them. The drive from the Loop to Gold Coast took 15 minutes through downtown Chicago, past Michigan Avenue's expensive shops and restaurants. I used the time to shift from shock at the empty office into methodical investigation mode, my engineer's training taking over where parental emotion had failed. Palmer House Hotel commanded an entire city block, its historic facade gleaming in the afternoon sun. Doormen in elaborate uniforms helped guests from expensive cars, while I parked my modest Honda across the street, observing the luxury establishment that my stolen retirement money had funded. The lobby was everything I'd expected from the receipt amounts: crystal chandeliers, marble floors, the kind of understated elegance that screamed wealth. I approached the concierge desk feeling underdressed despite my best suit. "I found these receipts in a taxi," I lied, showing the Palmer House bills. "Thought someone might be looking for them." The concierge, a professional woman in her 30s, glanced at the dates and amounts. "Oh yes, Mr. Smith and the redhead. They stayed here for weeks, lovely couple. Very generous tippers." Mr. Smith. Ward hadn't even used his real name while spending my money on luxury accommodations. "The woman had beautiful red hair," she continued. "They seemed so happy together, always dressed impeccably. Took taxis to the same restaurant almost every evening." "Which restaurant?" She consulted her computer. "Nona's Kitchen in Little Italy. They mentioned it was their favorite place, said they were thinking of becoming regulars there." I thanked her and walked back to my car, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Ward and Ruby weren't just enjoying my stolen money. They had a specific plan for it. The restaurant visits weren't random, they were scouting their next target. The drive to Little Italy took 25 minutes through Monday afternoon traffic. Nona's Kitchen occupied the ground floor of a brick building on Taylor Street, its windows displaying hand-painted signs advertising traditional Italian dishes. The kind of family restaurant that had probably operated in the same location for decades. A friendly hostess greeted me as I entered. The interior was warm and inviting, checkered tablecloths, photos of Italy covering the walls, the smell of garlic and herbs from the kitchen. "I'm looking for information about a young couple who might have been here recently," I said, showing the family photo of Ward. "My son and his girlfriend." "The young man with the expensive clothes," she exclaimed. "They came in almost every night for 2 weeks, always asking questions about the business, very interested in how long we'd been open, whether we owned the building." Before I could respond, a woman emerged from the kitchen, mid-50s, flour dusting her apron, the kind of no-nonsense expression that suggested she owned the place. "You're asking about the couple who wanted to buy my restaurant?" Violet Pearl wiped her hands on her apron, studying me with curious eyes. "Your son and the redhead? Buy your restaurant?" Violet gestured toward a corner table. "They said they had cash ready, wanted to take over everything, recipes, equipment, customer base. Kept pushing for a quick sale, no inspections, no lawyers. Said they could close within a week." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Ward and Ruby hadn't stolen my money for a luxury lifestyle. They'd stolen it to buy an established business that would give them legitimate income and social respectability. "When did you last see them?" I asked. "About a week ago. I asked for financial documentation, proof they actually had the money they claimed. They said they'd bring paperwork by Friday, but they never showed up." Friday, the day after I'd started calling Ward, before I'd discovered his empty apartment. They'd run when they realized I was getting suspicious. "They seem nice enough," Violet continued. "But something felt rushed about the whole thing. Most people buying a restaurant want to know about profit margins, supplier contracts, staff situation. These two just wanted to know if I was ready to retire." I sat in my car outside Nona's Kitchen after thanking Violet for her time, staring at the restaurant through the windshield. Ward and Ruby had planned to spend my retirement money building their future together, using my life's work to start their new life as respectable business owners. I was no longer the confused victim who'd sat in his living room, wondering what had happened to his son. I was a man with a target, a clear understanding of what had been taken from me, and a growing determination to take it back. Starting the car, I drove home through the gathering dusk, my mind already working on what came next. Tuesday morning found me transforming my kitchen table into a war room. Hotel receipts arranged in chronological order. Ward's fake business cards lined up like evidence. My old laptop humming to life with deliberate patience. The rain against my windows created perfect background noise for the systematic destruction I was planning. "Ward Rice Chicago," I typed into Google, my fingers moving with the careful precision of someone who'd spent 40 years operating complex machinery. The search results painted a picture that made my jaw clench. Facebook posts showing expensive dinners, Instagram photos of luxury hotel rooms, all time-stamped during the weeks after my money disappeared. Ruby Hunt's social media was even more revealing. Her Instagram feed looked like a millionaire's lifestyle blog. Champagne brunches, designer shopping bags, spa treatments that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Every photo carefully staged to show off wealth she'd stolen from me. "They've been living like millionaires on my retirement," I muttered, clicking through image after image of my money being spent on frivolous luxury. The restaurant research took longer, but proved more valuable. Nona's Kitchen had been listed for sale at exactly $180,000, the precise amount Ward had stolen from me. Public business records showed Violet Pearl had owned it for 23 years, building it from a small family operation into a neighborhood institution. Ward and Ruby hadn't just stolen my money randomly. They'd calculated exactly how much they needed to buy respectability, then manipulated me into providing it. My phone rang around noon. Jim Henderson, my old colleague from the factory, calling back after I'd left a careful voicemail about investment problems. "Winfred, you sound like you're in trouble," Jim said without preamble. "What's really going on?" I explained the situation without revealing my growing plans for revenge, focusing on the financial fraud and my son's betrayal. Jim listened without interruption, occasionally making sympathetic noises. "Had something similar happen to my brother-in-law 5 years ago," Jim said finally. "Scammer convinced him to refinance his house for a fake business opportunity. You know what worked? Police investigation? Police took 2 years and recovered maybe 10% of the money. What worked was beating them at their own game." Jim's voice carried the satisfaction of someone who'd seen justice served. "Sometimes you have to protect yourself, because the system sure won't." After hanging up, I sat staring at my notepad covered with research findings. The logical part of my engineer's brain was assembling a strategy that had nothing to do with law enforcement and everything to do with systematic sabotage. Ward wanted to play businessman with my money? I'd show him what real business looked like. Evening brought clarity and cold determination. I closed my laptop and reached for my phone, scrolling through contacts until I found Violet Pearl, restaurant owner. My finger hovered over the call button. Not yet. Tomorrow, I would become the hunter instead of the hunted. Tonight, I would finish planning how to destroy everything Ward and Ruby had built with my stolen life savings. Setting the phone down without calling, I walked to my bedroom, knowing that sleep would be impossible. But that was fine. Predators hunt better when they're hungry. Wednesday morning brought the transformation I'd been preparing for since Monday. I dressed in my Navy suit with the care of a soldier preparing for battle, reviewing my notes one final time before driving downtown to execute the first phase of my revenge. The restaurant looked different in the morning light, busier, more prosperous, exactly the kind of established business that would provide Ward and Ruby with legitimate income and social respectability. I parked across the street and observed the lunch crowd for 20 minutes, timing my approach for maximum impact. Violet Pearl greeted me warmly when I entered, recognition lighting her face. "You're Ward's father. Did you find him?" "Actually, I'm here on business," I said, pulling out a folder containing documents I'd prepared the night before. "I'd like to make an offer on your restaurant." Her expression shifted from friendly to professionally cautious. "I appreciate your interest, but I've already got buyers lined up. Your son and his girlfriend have been very serious about purchasing." "I'm prepared to offer $230,000, I said calmly. "Cash, closing within 24 hours, no contingencies." Violet's eyes widened. Ward and Ruby had offered exactly what she was asking, my stolen $180,000. I was offering $50,000 more, funded by a home equity loan I'd applied for yesterday, using my house as collateral. "That's substantially more than we discussed," she said slowly. But I gave my word to the young couple. It wouldn't feel right to break that agreement. "Business is business," I replied, with the calm confidence of someone who'd spent decades in manufacturing negotiations. "My offer guarantees you can retire comfortably instead of just adequately. Your loyalty is admirable, but my son will understand that you have to do what's best for yourself." The ethical struggle played out across her face. I watched her weigh obligation against opportunity, exactly as I'd calculated she would. "If you can truly close tomorrow," she said finally, "I suppose I should consider what's best for my future." 2 hours later, I sat in my bank's loan officer's office, signing documents that put my home at risk to fund my revenge against my own son. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was risking everything to destroy the very person I'd raised and loved. "This represents most of your home's equity," the loan officer warned. "If something goes wrong with your business venture—" "I understand the risks," I replied, knowing she couldn't possibly understand the real risk I was taking. Not financial risk, emotional risk. The risk that destroying Ward might destroy whatever remained of the man I used to be. By 4 o'clock, I was sitting in my car outside the Palmer House Hotel, watching Ward and Ruby's balcony through binoculars I'd borrowed from my late wife's birdwatching kit. The call would come soon. When Ward's phone rang, I saw him answer casually, probably expecting routine business conversation, but his posture changed dramatically as Violet explained the situation. He gestured frantically, pacing the small balcony while Ruby watched with growing alarm. "What do you mean someone else bought it?" I could read his lips through the binoculars, watching my son's secure world crumble in real time. Ruby started yelling before he'd finished the call, her angry gestures suggesting she was blaming him for losing their carefully planned future. Ward's confusion was obvious. He couldn't comprehend how their perfect scheme had been derailed by an unknown competitor. My phone rang, Violet confirming the paperwork was ready for tomorrow's closing. "Everything's arranged," I told her, watching Ward throw what looked like a room service menu across their balcony in frustration. "I'll see you first thing in the morning." Thursday morning, I completed the restaurant purchase with the methodical precision of someone who'd spent 40 years managing complex industrial projects. By 10 o'clock, I owned Nona's kitchen and had effectively destroyed Ward and Ruby's primary plan for laundering my stolen money. But destroying their future wasn't enough. I wanted to systematically eliminate every aspect of the luxury lifestyle they had built with my retirement savings. The IRS office downtown occupied 3 floors of a glass tower that specialized in intimidating taxpayers. I'd made an appointment using my real name and legitimate concerns about tax fraud, carrying a folder thick with evidence I'd assembled through careful research. "Mr. Rice, you're reporting suspected income tax evasion?" The IRS agent, a professional woman in her 40s, reviewed my documentation with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen every type of financial fraud. "My son has been living in luxury hotels and making expensive purchases without reporting any corresponding income," I explained, spreading out printouts of Ward's social media posts showing thousands of dollars in expenditures. "These photos are time-stamped, and I have receipts showing he's spent over $30,000 in the past month alone." The agent's interest sharpened as she examined the evidence. "Do you have information about the source of these funds?" "He convinced me to invest my retirement savings in what turned out to be a fraudulent company," I said, providing bank records showing the $180,000 transfer. "I believe he's used that money to fund this lifestyle without reporting it as income." The paperwork took an hour to complete, but I left, knowing that Ward would soon face federal tax investigators equipped with powers that local police lacked. The IRS didn't need to prove criminal intent. They just needed to prove he'd spent money he hadn't reported earning. From my home office that afternoon, I researched Ward's other expensive purchases through online database searches that were perfectly legal for concerned citizens. The luxury BMW lease stood out immediately. $60,000 vehicle, significant down payment, monthly costs that should have been impossible for someone with no reported income. One phone call to the financing company, explaining the fraudulent source of the down payment with supporting documentation, resulted in immediate vehicle recovery authorization. Repo companies worked fast when fraud was involved. By 3 o'clock, I was parked across from the Palmer House garage, watching professional vehicle recovery specialists locate Ward's BMW. The repo team worked with quiet efficiency. No drama, no confrontation, just the systematic removal of another piece of his stolen lifestyle. Ward and Ruby emerged from the hotel just as the tow truck was pulling away with their transportation. Ruby's breakdown was immediate and public, screaming accusations while Ward stood frozen in disbelief. "This can't be coincidence," I heard him say to Ruby as they argued on the sidewalk. "Someone is doing this to us deliberately." My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Dad, we need to talk. Something weird is happening." I stared at the message for a long moment, watching Ward pace frantically, while Ruby sat on a bench with her head in her hands. My son was finally beginning to understand that someone with superior resources and planning had declared war on everything he'd built with my money. Deleting the message without responding, I started my car and drove home through afternoon traffic. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to systematically dismantle whatever remained of their carefully constructed fraud. The hunter was patient. The prey was beginning to panic. Friday evening found me at my dining table, organizing documents from the week's strategic strikes when aggressive doorbell ringing shattered the quiet of my suburban street. Through the front window, I could see Ward pacing on my porch like a caged animal, his expensive clothes wrinkled and his hair disheveled. I took a deliberate moment to stack my papers neatly, then walked to the door with measured steps. Ward pushed past me the instant I opened it, his face flushed with desperate rage. "We need to talk right now." "Hello, Ward," I said calmly, closing the door and turning to face my son. "You look upset." "Upset?" He spun around, gesturing wildly. "Everything in my life is falling apart. The restaurant deal collapsed, my car got repossessed, the IRS is asking questions, and you're acting like nothing happened." I remained standing, watching him pace my living room with the detached interest of a scientist observing a specimen. "Coincidences happen, son. Poor choices have consequences." "Coincidences?" Ward stopped pacing and stared at me with growing certainty. "Every problem started the day after I got your investment money. Every single one." "That's an interesting theory," I replied, settling into my armchair. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Ward's hands clenched into fists as he leaned forward. "I'm suggesting that someone with access to my personal information has been systematically destroying everything I've worked for. Someone who knows about my business plans, my finances, my timeline. Sounds like you should be more careful about who you trust with sensitive information," I observed. The calm reasonableness of my tone seemed to infuriate him further. Ward began pacing again, running his hands through his hair. "This isn't some random attack. Someone planned this, coordinated it, timed it perfectly to cause maximum damage." I studied my son's agitated movements, noting how his expensive suit, probably bought with my money, now looked disheveled and desperate. "If someone were hypothetically targeting you, what do you think their motivation might be?" "Stop playing games," Ward shouted, loud enough that neighbors might hear. "You know exactly what happened to my money, don't you?" "Your money?" I asked quietly. "That's an interesting way to describe it." Ward froze mid-pace, his face going pale as he realized what he'd just said. "I meant the investment money, the funds I was managing for the Harrison deal." "Ah, yes, Harrison Financial," I said with mild interest. "How is that investment performing?" Ward's jaw worked silently for several seconds before he found his voice. "If you don't stop whatever you're doing, I'll go to the police. I'll tell them everything about harassment and persecution." I leaned back in my chair, completely relaxed. "You should always do what you think is right, Ward. The truth usually comes out eventually." Something in my tone made him step back, his anger shifting toward genuine fear. "You can't destroy me like this. I'm your son." "Yes," I agreed quietly. "You are my son, and that makes what you did so much worse." Ward stared at me for a long moment, processing the implications of my words. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I'll find a way to fight back. I won't let you ruin everything." I stood up slowly, maintaining eye contact. "Be very careful about your next steps, Ward. Consider all the consequences before you act." He backed toward the door, his bravado finally cracking completely. "This isn't over." "No," I agreed, "it isn't." After Ward left, I walked to the window and watched him argue with Ruby in their taxi. Her animated gestures suggested panic and blame, while Ward sat slumped in defeat. I returned to my dining table and reached for my phone, scrolling through contacts to find a number I hadn't called in months. Agent Morrison answered on the second ring. "It's Winfred Rice," I said. "We need to move faster than planned. He's getting suspicious." The weekend passed with methodical preparation. Saturday brought strategic phone calls to federal contacts I'd cultivated through 40 years in manufacturing. Sunday involved filing additional paperwork that would trap Ward in a web of official investigations. By Monday morning at 10 o'clock, when Ward knocked softly on my front door, I was ready for him. This time, he waited for me to answer. No pushing, no aggressive entry. He stood on my porch with slumped shoulders and hollow eyes, looking like a man who'd spent the weekend learning exactly how much trouble he was in. "May I come in, Dad?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside and gestured toward the living room. Ward sat down when invited, his expensive suit somehow looking cheap, now that desperation had replaced confidence. "They think I'm the criminal," he said without preamble. "I went to the police station thinking I was reporting harassment, and they treated me like a suspect." I settled into my chair, studying my son's face. "What did they tell you?" "They had files, Dad. Thick files with my name on them. Bank transfer records, photographs, witness statements. They asked me about fraudulent investment schemes, money laundering, tax evasion." Ward's voice cracked slightly. "They acted like they'd been investigating me for weeks." I reached into the folder beside my chair and pulled out copies of official documents. "They have been investigating you for weeks, Ward. Ever since I filed these reports." Ward's face went white as he recognized my signature on police complaint forms. You did this?" "I provided evidence of financial crimes," I replied calmly. "The Harrison financial fraud, the fake office lease, the forged investment documents, the systematic theft of my retirement savings." "But you're my father!" Ward's voice rose to near panic. "How could you turn me in like this?" I spread additional documents across the coffee table, bank records showing the $180,000 transfer, photocopies of Ward's fake business cards, hotel receipts proving luxury expenditures. "How could you look me in the eyes, invoke your mother's memory, and steal everything I'd worked 40 years to save?" Ward stared at the evidence, his hands trembling as he realized the scope of what I'd assembled against him. "This is all circumstantial. You can't prove I meant to." "Ward." My voice cut through his denials like a blade. "They have recordings of your phone calls to the bank, video surveillance from your fake office presentations, witness testimony from other victims you tried to defraud before targeting me." The last statement was a bluff, but Ward's expression told me he believed it completely. His carefully constructed scheme was unraveling faster than he could comprehend. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. I gathered the documents slowly, precisely, like an engineer organizing technical specifications. "I want you to understand that when you steal someone's future, they have nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous opponent you'll ever face." Ward sat in stunned silence, finally grasping the magnitude of his miscalculation. He'd assumed his father was a trusting old man who could be manipulated through family loyalty. Instead, he'd awakened something cold and methodical and utterly relentless. "I'll fix this somehow," Ward said as he stood to leave. "I'll make it right." "No, you won't," I replied quietly. "It's far too late for that." After Ward left, I walked to my phone and dialed Agent Morrison's direct line. "Agent Morrison, it's Winfred Rice. The subject will likely try something desperate now. Are we ready?" The answer would determine whether my systematic destruction of Ward Rice was complete or whether one final trap remained to be sprung. Wednesday afternoon brought the culmination of 3 weeks of systematic planning. Agent Morrison, my old colleague from the factory's security department, who'd moved to federal law enforcement, had coordinated everything with the precision I'd learned to expect from professional investigations. The setup was elegantly simple. Through an intermediary, Ward had been offered a meeting with potential investors who might help him raise money for legal defense. Desperate and running out of options, he had accepted immediately. I positioned myself in the hotel lobby across the street, watching Ward enter the conference room where he believed salvation waited. Instead, federal agents were ready with arrest warrants based on the comprehensive evidence I'd provided over the past month. The arrest took 12 minutes. Professional, efficient, thoroughly documented for the media cameras that somehow appeared at precisely the right moment. Ward emerged in handcuffs, his expensive suit now looking like a costume from a failed performance. Ruby watched the coverage from their hotel room television, according to Agent Morrison's surveillance team. Within 2 hours, she'd packed everything portable and disappeared with whatever cash remained from my stolen money. True to her opportunistic nature, she abandoned Ward the moment he became a liability instead of an asset. 2 weeks later, I sat in the sterile visiting room of Cook County Jail, waiting for my son to be brought from his cell. The Ward who shuffled to the table bore little resemblance to the confident manipulator who'd burst into my house with fake investment documents. Prison clothing hung loose on his diminished frame, and his face had acquired the hollow look of someone who finally understood the consequences of their choices. "You planned all of this," Ward said without preamble, his voice carrying neither anger nor surprise. "Every detail, every timing, every response." "Yes," I replied simply. Ward nodded slowly, as if confirming something he'd already accepted. "Ruby left the day I was arrested, took everything she could carry, and disappeared. I haven't heard from her since. I'm not surprised. The federal prosecutor says they're going to seize all my assets under forfeiture laws. Anything purchased with your money becomes evidence in the fraud case." Ward managed a bitter smile. "So, you got your money back after all." "Justice isn't about money, Ward." He leaned forward, studying my face with something approaching admiration. "I never stood a chance against you, did I? From the moment I walked into your house with those flowers and fake documents, you were already 10 steps ahead." I considered his question carefully. "You could have called me that first Friday after you realized I was suspicious. You could have confessed, returned the money, begged for forgiveness. I might have been satisfied with that. But you didn't think I would. No, I knew you wouldn't, because you're exactly the kind of man who doubles down when caught, who blames everyone except himself, who never takes responsibility for his choices." I paused, letting that sink in. "You're the kind of man who steals from his own father." Ward sat back in his chair, and for the first time in months, he looked like the son I'd once known, before greed and desperation had transformed him into something unrecognizable. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said quietly, "for all of it. For taking your money, for lying to you, for using Mom's memory against you. I'm truly sorry." I studied his face, searching for manipulation and finding only exhaustion. "I believe you are. But sorry doesn't rebuild trust, Ward. Sorry doesn't undo betrayal." Standing to leave, I looked down at my son one final time. "You stole my future, Ward." So I took back my dignity. The drive home took me through neighborhoods where normal families lived normal lives, where sons called their fathers with good news instead of elaborate fraud schemes. I stopped at a red light and glanced at the old family photo on my passenger seat. Ward at 25, arm around his mother, both of them smiling at a camera held by someone they trusted completely. I opened my glove compartment and placed the photograph inside, closing it with the firm click of something being put away permanently. When the light turned green, I drove toward my empty house where justice had been served, revenge had been completed, and victory tasted like ashes in my mouth. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching,